Hello, you absolute legends. 2 months ago, I released my first video exposing the fraud committed by the Completionist and his charity, the Open Hand Foundation. Since then, it's been a rough time for our good friend Jirard. The public has turned against him, and his friends have abandoned him. It seems to be almost universal agreement that what Jirard did was wrong. But there was one man, one hero, one lawyer who dared to go against the grain. Recently, the lawyer known as Mooney, who runs the Moon channel, uploaded a video titled Jobs vs. the Completionist. In this video, Mooney goes hard, and it's a scathing review of my videos covering the Open Hand Foundation. According to Mooney, I'm dreadfully uninformed and lack the sufficient knowledge to talk about whether or not what the Completionist did was illegal. On top of that, he goes on the defense on behalf of the Completionist and Open Hand, saying that their actions were normal and even expected behavior of a charity. A lot of people came away from that video with a new sense of understanding. Perhaps Carl was reckless, ignorant, and maybe even malicious. I mean, Mooney says as much in his video. According to Mooney, I wasn't genuinely trying to find out what happened with Jirard and his charity. I basically just decided he was a fraudster from the get-go, and then I proceeded to try and destroy his career and ruin the future of dementia research without considering anything else. The reason so many people were persuaded by Mooney's video is because of how confidently and smugly he talks. I mean, he sounds almost as pompous as me, which is extremely hard to do. But unfortunately, people have been misled, because Mooney has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. This is one of the most stunning examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect I've ever seen. We are talking about a very serious situation here. Charity fraud ain't no joke. If you're going to comment on it one way or the other, you should probably try to inform yourself on what happened. For my part, I conducted an investigation which involved talking to the Completionist, getting official statements from Open Hand, spending countless hours looking through Indieland VODs, researching Jirard and his family, and cross-checking my findings with research partners. At the end of my investigation, I presented my conclusions. But do you know what Mooney did to try and learn about what happened? Do you know what kind of investigation Mooney conducted? He watched my YouTube videos. According to Mooney, all you need to do to be an expert on a situation is watch YouTube. You don't need to actually research anything, just sit down for an hour and ingest the scraps of information that I spoon-feed you, and suddenly you are totally qualified to decide whether or not Jirard committed charity fraud. Mooney's video is one of the most self-unaware pieces of content I've ever seen. In one breath, he chastises me for being uninformed, and then in the next, he spouts facts that are completely wrong because he has not done a single bit of actual research. It wouldn't matter if you were the greatest lawyer in the world. If you don't even know the basic facts of the case, your opinion is meaningless. Mooney is one of the most clueless people I've ever seen talk on this matter, and because he knows so little, and because the facts that he presents are so wrong, his conclusions are not only ridiculous, but they are also dangerous. Casual viewers would be none the wiser of just how uninformed Mooney is, because in order to realize this, you need to know something about the situation. Most people simply don't, but I do. So today, we are going to go through Mooney's video, and I will demonstrate to you that Mooney is not only ignorant, but he is also negligent. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, the sponsor of this video is the amazing MMO fantasy conquest game Call of Dragons. From the creators of Rise of Kingdoms, there is so much to do in Call of Dragons, whether it's fight other players in PvP, rid the world of invaders in PvE, or fight in epic guild vs guild warfare. The world of Tamaris is full of amazing races you'll need to recruit, all with unique strengths. Choose one of 3 factions, develop your city and build up huge armies to conquer the surrounding lands. Mountains, rivers, valleys, and heaps of other features litter the landscape, and you'll need to use them all to your advantage, whether it's using ranged units to fire across rivers or down from the tops of mountains, or using flying units to overcome barriers and launch surprise attacks. Utilize powerful hero skills on the battlefield by finding and equipping magical artifacts. Skills will allow you to do massive damage from afar, hold off enemies, or even sneak up on enemies with invisibility. Ultimately, those who make the best strategic decisions will win, and there are endless tactical possibilities. Call of Dragons is really fun to play, is available on PC and mobile, and is free. So make sure to click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to try it out, as well as use the bonus code CODFANTASY for huge in-game rewards. Now, before we get stuck into the details, I want to quickly address something. You might notice throughout this video that I seem a bit annoyed, maybe even angry. And the truth is, I am angry. I'll try not to let that impact this video too much, but it will have some kind of impact. And I want to let you know why I'm angry. At the end of Mooney's video, he has an entire section highlighting how much money he thinks I made from talking about OpenHand.
That's around $40,000 in YouTube income and $16,000 in sponsorships. Our lowball figure is about $56,000 made on the back of these accusations, roughly the annual median American male individual income.
The implication is that I profited from the situation and that my motives aren't trustworthy. Perhaps I made my videos just to make a quick buck. This isn't a new tactic. I've seen this before. Remember this guy?
Carl Jobs is a professional YouTube content creator. His goal is to generate maximum views. He's monetized, plus he has sponsors to please.
Disingenuous people always do this because they want to spin a negative narrative instead of just sticking to the facts of the matter. It's not just Mooney who does this, I see this everywhere. But here is the truth. I lost money covering the OpenHand story. You might wonder how that's even possible. My videos were monetized, and a couple of them even had sponsors. They definitely made money. What on earth do I mean when I say I lost money? Well, this question arises from a lack of understanding and ignorance as to how my YouTube channel works. I don't come up with a video idea and then after that solicit a sponsor for it. My sponsors are booked months in advance. So for example, for November when I first covered this story, I already had 3 sponsors booked in for that month. That means I was always going to make 3 videos. It doesn't matter what videos I put those sponsors in or what the topic is, I'm still going to be paid the same. If this OpenHand situation never happened, I would have made exactly the same amount of videos. I just would have covered different topics. And I always get a decent amount of views no matter what I talk about, so I don't need this drama. In November, I had 3 sponsors booked, and I released 3 videos, but only 2 of them were sponsored. This is because I actually cancelled one of the sponsors because I released my first OpenHand video without a sponsor in it. That sponsor money was already in my pocket. I had to proactively cancel it and forfeit the money I was already promised. If I had covered any other topic, I would have included that sponsor and I would have made more money. And just so you know, that sponsorship was worth $8,000. And what you need to understand is that it's not just my money. I have a wife and son. It's their money too. It's my wife's money just as much as it is mine. I'm sure if you asked her, she'd really like to have that money. And I'm also sure she doesn't give a single shit about any of this online drama. But more than that, you have to appreciate the situation I'm in right now. I'm dealing with a frivolous lawsuit from a psychopath. My legal bill just for the month of November was $50,000. I could really fucking use that money right now. But despite the legal bills I have to pay, despite the fact that it's not just my money I'm sacrificing, despite the fact that even if I did put a sponsor in that video, it changes nothing about the content of the video, even though I have every single right to monetize content I've worked hard to produce, I still cancelled that sponsor. And after all that, I have to sit here and listen to these assholes lie about my motivations and claim that I'm doing this just to make money. So yes, I'm a bit pissed off. Beyond that, Mooney's video is generally insulting in its premise, and it's especially so because of how ironic it is. Mooney's video centers around the idea that I cannot comment on whether or not the completionist actions were criminal because I haven't studied the law. But this idea falls flat for multiple reasons. First, if it required a law degree to understand what is or isn't legal, our society could not function. We absolutely can identify what is or isn't legal without looking up the specific statute. We do this every single day. Everyone knows that lying in order to solicit funds is fraud. Mooney can be as pretentious as he wants and try to make things as complicated as he wants, but it doesn't change this simple fact. The idea that you need to be a lawyer to know right from wrong, illegal from legal, is downright preposterous. And in practice, this is just not the way the world works. When it comes to prosecuting someone in a courtroom and dealing out potential punishments, yes, these legal definitions matter because they affect how actions are treated by the state. But when it comes to members of the the public, identifying and reporting illegal activities, I can be as simple as I want. I could give you the most basic bitch definition of fraud, and that's perfectly fine to communicate an idea. And in fact, the idea that if you can't identify a specific statute, you shouldn't comment on illegal activity is downright dangerous. As members of a society, it is our moral obligation to call out harmful behavior when we see it. In saying this, I do have a large platform, and that comes with a lot of responsibility. I have to make sure that when I make a serious accusation like fraud, that I've done my due diligence. And in this case, you're damn right I did my due diligence. Unlike Mooney, I didn't just watch some YouTube videos and start throwing around accusations of fraud. This is because when I did my investigation, no YouTube videos even existed. I had to actually put in the time and effort into finding out what really happened. I also didn't just read a legal statute and think this somehow makes me an authority on the facts of the matter. To give you an idea about just how clueless Mooney was, he didn't even know the full call between Mutahar, Jirard, and myself was posted online. This is a major piece of evidence that he ignored. It's a call that has been listened to by 500,000 other people, and has been reacted to by dozens of YouTube channels. Mooney was so ignorant, he didn't even know it existed, and because of this, large chunks of his video are just flat out wrong because he couldn't be bothered to learn about the situation. But even if the phone call wasn't posted online, the mere fact that it existed at all should have told you that you are ignorant. If you know that I have the full recording and you don't, you already know that you are way more uninformed than me. In a Reddit exchange between Mooney and myself after he released his video, he confessed he only considered my YouTube videos and didn't look at anything else. Mooney doesn't seem to appreciate the difference between reality and a YouTube video. I have spent hundreds of hours researching the Completionist and his charity streams. It is simply impossible for me to put everything that I know into a YouTube video. It would be 50 hours long. A YouTube video is not evidence. The point of a YouTube video is just to convey an idea and entertain people. Mooney's under the impression the information presented in my videos is all the information there is. This concept is so ridiculous and naive, it's incredible. If the Completionist wants to sue me and discuss this over a 2-week trial, I'd be happy to present the entire case. But until then, if you're simply relying on my YouTube videos, you know hardly anything. All you know is the tiny sliver of information I felt like providing. That's hardly enough to be confident in your conclusions. This applies to my viewers as well. You shouldn't just watch my videos and blindly believe you know all that there is to know. I've actually done the work, so I'm confident making these claims publicly. With all of this established, let's go through Mooney's video.
All rise. The Court of Public Opinion is now in session. The Honorable Judge Mooney is presiding. Please be seated. On the plaintiff's side, we have Carl Jobst, some ordinary gamers, and the public, and on the defendant's side we have Jirard, the completionist Khalil, and the 501c3 charity organization, the Open Hand Foundation.
The first half of Mooney's video attempts to summarize the situation and provide context as well as some legal information. I think the more important things are in the second half because that's where we find his analysis, but there are some things to point out in the first half as well.
Jirard, the completionist Khalil, is a successful YouTuber. He runs an annual fundraising event called Indieland, which raises money for the Open Hand Foundation, a charitable organization founded by his father in memory of his mother, who sadly passed from frontal-temporal dementia in 2003.
We are less than a minute in, and Mooney is already showing just how ignorant he is of the situation. He doesn't even know which year Jirard's mother died. He says 2003, but it was actually 2013. In this case, it doesn't really affect anything, but it's good to notice these factual errors because they start to tell a story of just how uninformed Mooney is.
It seems like everyone on YouTube has already weighed in on the situation, offering their hot takes fresh from the peanut gallery. Well, we are going to do something different. We are going to approach this situation like a lawyer does, and break down each allegation levied by the plaintiffs, weigh it against the evidence, and present our findings.
Mooney's idea of weighing allegations against the evidence is just to watch a few YouTube videos. As Mooney knows, watching YouTube videos is not a good attempt at fact-finding. And if you have a lawyer whose idea of researching your case is just to watch a few YouTube videos, fire them immediately. To be crystal clear, Mooney did not examine the evidence. He examined a YouTube video, which contained a portion of my knowledge of the situation. The best Mooney can say is that he has made inferences based on my YouTube videos, but he's still uninformed informed because he hasn't done independent research and thus cannot make any reasonable conclusions. Instead, he incorrectly asserts he is some kind of authority and that he has actually done some kind of reasonable fact-finding, which is not true.
The Open Hand Foundation is a 501c3 organization. What does that mean, and what obligations does a 501c3 have?
Mooney spends a large portion of the video talking about 501c3 legal obligations, to which I don't feel is relevant to my particular claims. I've never discussed the legal obligations of charities, nor would I be smart to, because I simply don't know. But this isn't about legal obligations. For example, I never said it was illegal for a charity to withhold all of its donations. I never said a charity legally had to disperse a certain amount of money. I never said a charity couldn't have expenses. What I said is that when Jirard tells the public he is doing something very specific with that money when he in fact is not, this is fraud.
The fundamental allegations are, number 1, the completionist committed charity fraud by lying about what donations received by Open Hand were being used for. Number 2, the completionist stole some of the money Open Hand should have received, which is embezzlement. And number 3, there are funds that are still missing, presumed stolen, from the golf tournament, from Jamie Lee Curtis, and more, as per the Open Hand Foundation's tax returns.
Mooney then attempts to break down the allegations. These are mostly correct. However, on number 3, I never said the grant given by Jamie Lee Curtis was missing. I don't know where this came from. It certainly wasn't in my videos. Mooney does include some information from Mutahar's video, so maybe it was from there, but I don't remember Mutahar saying that either.
Well, Jirard's apology is very interesting, to say the least. It's immediately apparent that lawyers were involved in this statement, and I gotta say, it's well put together.
After breaking down the allegations, Mooney then looks at Jirard's response video. However, halfway through, Mooney does something really bizarre. He is supposed to be breaking down what Jirard said, but he instead goes on a long-winded rant about endowments.
If you are donating permanently restricted funds, what you can do instead of just sending the money in one lump sum is you can set up an endowment fund, where the principal amount of money is either untouchable or is not wholly expendable, but the interest from the fund is usable. With a large enough endowment, the charity has money not just for life, but forever. However, this requires not only a large sum, but a complicated procedure to set up the endowment, one that requires lawyers, which requires time and money. In addition, one has to carefully vet candidates and then determine what to restrict funds for in order to maximize the fund's effects. Because such an endowment is powered by interest, naturally the larger the fund is, the larger the principal and the more effective it is in the long run. It is typical behavior. It is even, dare I say, expected behavior.
Jirard never mentioned endowments. In fact, no one has ever mentioned endowments. Mooney is quite literally fabricating a fairy tale about the potential motives of the Open Hand Foundation and creating defenses on their behalf, when the evidence that he is supposed to have examined says the complete opposite. The Open Hand Foundation and Jirard himself have told us multiple times why they kept the money. We don't need to speculate. We don't need to make up fiction. We know the answer. I was the person who actually reached out to Open Hand and asked why they hadn't donated the money, and because of this, their response is firmly cemented into my memory. Someone who didn't do this and just watched a video where it was briefly mentioned may forget it, however. In the official Open Hand statement, Jacques, the vice president of Open Hand, states in no uncertain terms, "Prior to our official registration as a foundation, we donated body parts for research and made financial contributions to an institution that, in our view, made insufficient progress in the fight against these debilitating conditions. This prior experience has taught us the importance of careful consideration in our partnership and is the reason why we continue to search for a proper partner and recipient of our donations. Their reason for holding the money was because they didn't know who they should give it to. This isn't ambiguous in the slightest, and Mooney seems hell-bent on ignoring the statements of the party in question because he either forgot they existed or, even worse, never even bothered to read them in the first place." Jirard, a director of the Open Hand Foundation, painted a different picture in his call to Mutahar and myself. According to him, he was fighting with his family to donate the money because it was self-admittedly not fucking cool that the money hadn't been dispersed.
You weren't notified that the money was sitting there the whole time?
I knew it was sitting there at a certain point, and that's what made me proactively go about it. Like, I was made aware in 2021 when the money hadn't moved yet. And that's what made me go, that's not fucking cool. And that's when I got personally involved to move it.
Not that I was trying to save face, but like, this is a private fight that I've been dealing with for months with my family.
Jirard would then go on to seemingly recant this admission in his response video and claim that it was his intention the entire time to withhold the money because he wanted to make a restricted donation.
The Open Hand Foundation raised funds in an unrestricted manner with the intention to restrict a larger donation towards dementia research. Larger restricted donations ensure clear measures and direction, but can take time, whereas unrestricted donations are often instantaneous and not tracked. This is one of the big reasons as to why the donation took so long.
We have 3 completely different reasons given from members within OpenHand as to why the money hadn't been donated, and none of them mentioned endowments. And what's so interesting about Mooney's endowment rant is that he talks as if OpenHand could have single-handedly sustained an organization for dementia research, if only they saved up enough money.
In this way, if you have a very large sum of principal delivered in the form of permanently restricted funds, you could potentially fund a charity in perpetuity. In other words, you know the old parable, give a man a fish and he's fed for a day, but teach a man to fish and he's fed for life? That's what's going on here. With a large enough endowment, the charity has money, not just for life, but forever.
Honest to God, I have no idea what Mooney is talking about, and it's convenient that he doesn't mention specific figures either. We know how much money OpenHand was raising. We have their tax forms. There is no reason to be so vague here. OpenHand was raising around $100,000 per year. The Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, which is the organization OpenHand donated $600,000 to, receives tens of millions of dollars in donations every single year. OpenHand had to hoard money for 10 years to donate but a fraction of a single year of the AFTD's revenue. And Mooney is out here talking as if the OpenHand Foundation was going to change the world if only we let them save up for just a few more years.
For example, if you make a restricted donation of, I don't know, $600,000 to a charity, and the donation is restricted only to research activities, the charity cannot then pull that money and spend it on employee salaries. Here's the catch though. When Jirard states that the bigger the donation is, the better. This is true.
No shit, Sherlock. It doesn't need to be explained that a bigger donation is better. But that's not true if you need to withhold funds for a decade in order to do it. None of this should need explaining. And it's ultimately pointless to talk about because not only is it not what OpenHand said in their official statement, but it's also a giant red herring. The issue is not that OpenHand held on to money. The issue is that Jirard was lying about where the money was going and what it was being used for. To spend so much energy talking about the morality of saving up money to make a large donation is to be extremely dense or extremely dishonest, and it merely serves as a distraction to the allegations that are being levied. Before we move on, I just need to bring up something I didn't mention in my response video. In his response video, Jirard said this about IndieLand 2019.
Our books do reconcile, and these accusations are the result of bad math and missing information. The 2019 IndieLand's net proceeds were $82,409.19, and when combined with $31,371.55 in revenue from the golf tournament and $10,000 from a direct supporter, it adds up to $123,780.74.
Jirard claims that IndieLand 2019 only had total proceeds of $84,000, and this is why the tax filings are correct and there is no missing money. Previously, I had shown a tweet of Jirard's where he claimed it had earnings of $109,000. This is a difference of $25,000. Some people said maybe this figure was wrong because, as the tweet says, these earnings are preliminary. Okay, sure, maybe this was premature, but then why in 2022 is Jirard saying this?
So back in 2019, IndieLand hit a big milestone. We raised over $100,000 for dementia research, and as a result, we said that next year, in the year 2020, we'd be making IndieLand a ticketed event that you could attend.
3 years later, he's still saying IndieLand raised over $100,000 for dementia research. This isn't preliminary. So tell me, was Jirard lying in 2019? Was he lying in 2022? Or is he just lying now after it was discovered all of that money never made it to charity?
Okay, so we finally have all of our allegations in a row, and we've reviewed the completionist's response. It's time to break down each allegation and weigh each one against the facts and the law.
Now we get into the meat and potatoes, and I have to stress again that Mooney does not know the difference between facts and a YouTube video. If all you've done is watch a YouTube video, you do not know the facts. All you know is what I've told you, and if you don't know the facts, you cannot weigh the allegations against them. It's obviously troubling that you can't differentiate between the two, and this video wouldn't have been so much of a problem if you made it clear that you were simply relying on YouTube videos and you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to the situation. But that's not what you did. You made people believe, incorrectly, that you had examined the evidence when you did not.
Let me preface this section by stating that prior to this drama, I had never watched a Completionist or Jobst or Mutahar video and that I don't have a horse in this race. What Jobst, Mutahar, and Jirard get up to is generally not my concern, but I do care a lot about charity work, which is why I want to weigh in. Outside of that, I maintain that I have no biases here.
Mooney has no idea who I am, who Mutahar is, or who the Completionist is, and claims he doesn't have a horse in this race. However, from his statements in the video, it's clear that this is not the case. As we will see, Mooney creates false narratives about my thought process and my intentions. He makes false claims about me with no substantiation whatsoever, and his false claims are always as negative as possible. When it comes to Jirard, his interpretations are always positive, even though they are equally as false and uninformed.
Starting now, finally, with allegation number 1. Let's analyze the claims and see whether this allegation is plausible, implausible, inconsequential, or trouble. We'll start by asking a simple question. If you are going to make a legal allegation pursuant to a legal term with legal consequences, where should you get your definitions from? Well, I'll tell you where you shouldn't get your definitions from. Jobst and Mutahar both pull their definition of charity fraud, which is their primary and most severe allegation, from legalmatch.com, which is basically the lawyer's version of Christian Mingle. It helps prospective clients find lawyers. It's not a reliable legal resource. Jobst uses this definition. Charity fraud is when someone takes advantage of a charitable or nonprofit organization for their own personal gain. But you see, this is not a legal definition. Open Hand is based in California. This is a legal definition.
Mooney really has a problem with the fact that I talk about fraud in the general sense. According to Mooney, us plebs who can't recite the specific legal statute aren't worthy of talking about fraud because it's too complicated. We as the public should just sit this one out and let the amazing, far superior, far smarter people known as lawyers handle this one. Ultimately, Mooney tries to make this more complicated than it needs to be, because the definition he eventually arrives on is exactly the thing I'm accusing Jirard of. I am fully aware of what fraud is, and that's exactly what I'm saying the Completionist did. In my videos, I use a simplified definition because it's just a YouTube video, and the point of a YouTube video is to effectively and efficiently convey an idea to a lot of people. The point of my YouTube video isn't to convict Jirard of a crime. That's ridiculous, and therefore the specific statute doesn't apply in any way, shape, or form.
What's the difference here between definition 1 and definition 2 aside from the length and clarity? Well, definition 1, being a simplification, is unclear about what the terms takes advantage and personal gain mean, and definition 1 uses organization language when definition 2 uses purpose language.
Mooney does a bait and switch. He performs sleight of hand. He asserts this is a problem of definitions, but it really isn't. The definitions he uses don't change my opinion, because they still accurately fit the accusation I'm levying against Jirard. It doesn't matter what definition I put in the video, it doesn't change the facts, and it doesn't entirely encapsulate my own thought processes. Again, the purpose of a YouTube video is first and foremost to entertain, because if a video isn't easy to understand or entertaining, people won't watch it and I will get less money.
If you take money for charity reasons and you say something about what that charity is or does, how much it costs to reach out to get that money, or how that money is going to be used, and you can't back up what you said with facts, then you're guilty of a misdemeanor as long as you know what you said is untrue or you acted irresponsibly when you really should have known the things you said were untrue. But Mooney, I can hear you say, that definition was exactly the same as the first one, right? This is just semantics. Well, if you think the distinctions are semantic, then respectfully, you aren't qualified to be calling this behavior certainly illegal.
These are the types of things that really make me believe Mooney might be malicious. He claims I said the behavior was certainly illegal while plastering the actual quote on screen which shows something else. There is a big difference between almost certainly, and that difference is the reason I said almost. Not only did Mooney have to script this incorrectly, he had to see it while editing the video and believe it was acceptable to include.
He states that OpenHand has partnered with or worked with organizations including the USF and the Alzheimer's Association, and he states that IndieLand's proceeds go towards charity. But we know from the tax returns that OpenHand's accumulated funds were not in fact being used anywhere at the time these statements were made. That said, these statements are not conclusive, direct evidence of wrongdoing. This is circumstantial evidence, and we can interpret these statements either charitably or uncharitably.
Mooney talks about these issues as if they haven't already been specifically addressed by Jirard himself. I've already asked Jirard why he was name-dropping organizations when he knew they weren't being sent money, and his response was insufficient, to put it lightly. During our call, Jirard admitted that he found out in 2022 the money hadn't been donated.
I was made aware in 2021 when the money hadn't moved yet. And that's what made me go, that's not fucking cool. And that's when I got personally involved to move it. And
did anyone...
2021, last year, 2022.
And because I had already done a lot of research into the matter, I knew that Jirard was still saying in 2023 that he was funding organizations.
We are raising money for dementia research in honor of my late mom, trying to help folks who've been impacted by dementia, working with organizations like USF, FTD Association of America, Alzheimer's Association of America, and so many more.
If you listen to the call that Mudahar uploaded to his channel, you'll hear that after the technical difficulties, call 2 begins with this.
Hello?
So, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
To answer your question, Carl, I don't have an answer. I think that's my fuck up.
What's interesting is that I've never seen a single person ask what question Jirard is responding to. This might be really important. During technical difficulties, Jirard said that he could hear us, but we couldn't hear him. While Jirard was trying to get his microphone figured out, I asked him this question. And the reason I didn't include this in any of my videos is just because Mudahar was playing clips that were recorded in the audio, so it didn't sound good. But you can still hear what I ask. I did want to ask one thing, but it's kind of a bad question to ask if Jirard can't respond immediately,
Mm-hmm.
But I just
the way that I'll portray this.
The reason why this is a bigger problem than it otherwise may have been is because Jirard, when you were on IndieLand, even recently, you were saying that you were giving money to people. You were giving money to UCSF, AFTD, and Alzheimer's Association. And I just wasn't sure why you were saying those things publicly if you knew that the money was not being sent anywhere. Now we can listen to Jirard's answer, knowing the context.
Hello?
So, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
To answer your question, Carl, I don't have an answer. I think that's my fuck up. I have personally donated to AFTD and Alzheimer's Association over the years, and that's where, again, I assumed the money was going there to support them as we were talking negotiations about working with them. I don't really have a true answer for that, and that's on me completely, and I will own up to that.
This answer is not good. I mean, he even says he doesn't have an answer and that it's his fuck up. He then says that he made personal contributions to those organizations, which doesn't count, and says he assumed the money was going there. But that makes no sense because he already admitted that he knew in 2022. I distinctly remember immediately understanding during that call that Jirard was spouting nonsense. I felt as though he was lying to us, which did end up being true. And this is one of the reasons I didn't say much during that call.
Working with or even partnering with an organization doesn't necessarily imply funding it. Susan G. Komen is a public charity for breast cancer awareness, but their actual contributions to breast cancer research are somewhat limited. And that's okay. That's not only legal, but arguably, depending on one's perspectives, also ethical. It could be the case that OpenHand is working with USF or the Alzheimer's Association in ways that aren't necessarily reflected on the tax returns.
Why are you speculating when this question has already been asked and answered? Mooney tries to argue that maybe when Jirard says worked with, he means it in a way that doesn't involve money. But Jirard uses the words worked with in a very specific way. For example, take a look at this clip.
Donate money via Tiltify. All the money goes to the Open Hand Foundation, an organization that we started in honor of my mom, and all that money goes to dementia research. We don't touch any of it. We just work with the people who do need the money, and we help them do their thing.
There is only one way to reasonably interpret this. Jirard would then go to use the same terminology when listing the organizations he works with.
We are raising money for dementia research in honor of my late mom, trying to help folks who've been impacted by dementia, working with organizations like USF, FTD Association of America, Alzheimer's Association of America, and so many more.
But even ignoring the fact that Jirard clearly means he's funding these entities, the Open Hand Foundation doesn't work with the UCSF in any other capacity, which is why they quietly scrubbed any mention of the UCSF from their website after their lies were exposed. For years, the UCSF was listed as a beneficiary on the Open Hand website, but a few weeks ago, this entire page was deleted. That doesn't seem like something a charity would do if they were in fact working with them. It kind of seems like they are deleting evidence because they were caught in a lie. And for the record, one of the first things I did was reach out to the UCSF asking if they had received any money. This was back in October, weeks before I even spoke with Jirard, but they never responded to me. I bring this up because I've seen people claim I didn't even bother to let the UCSF know or ask them for confirmation. They assume this because it's not in my videos. But again, the videos do not cover everything. The Open Hand Foundation also doesn't work with the Alzheimer's Association in any capacity. In 2021, the Alzheimer's Association posted on their website a story that Jirard wrote about his mother. After it came to light the Open Hand Foundation was using their name and not actually donating money, they immediately deleted this article, which you can now only find on the Wayback Machine. This doesn't seem like the actions of an organization that the Open Hand Foundation was working with. This seems like the actions of an organization that realized Open Hand was lying about its association with it and wanted to distance itself. These events weren't in my videos, which of course means you had no idea of their existence. And you don't even have to take my word for it. Jirard admitted that's what he was doing.
During several recent Indieland events, press interviews, and podcasts, I went on record saying where the money was going to and that the Open Hand Foundation had worked with various organizations.
But here is what's amazing about these people. Even though it's clear as day that Jirard meant he was giving these organizations money, even though Jirard himself said he didn't have an answer for doing this and that it was his fuck-up, even though Open Hand has scrubbed all mentions of the UCSF from their website, even though the Alzheimer's Association deleted any mention of the Open Hand Foundation from their website, even though Jirard has had months to say how Open Hand was working with these organizations if they actually were, and he hasn't, people will still claim that maybe Jirard meant he wasn't giving them money, but was working with them in some other way. That's how deluded these people are.
And the times where Jirard has stated that funding has occurred might be obvious miscommunications or simple misstatements, human error that no reasonable person would take seriously. Of course, Open Hand isn't a primary funder of the University of San Francisco. Any reasonable person would see that this was a misstatement made by a very clearly nervous individual trying to do public speaking.
Oh, this is beautiful. You really have no idea who Jirard is, do you? Mooney paints Jirard to be a bumbling buffoon who is camera shy and struggles to do public speaking. Because Jirard is so nervous, he accidentally lies about what his charity is doing. The reality is that Jirard Khalil is a professional actor with a double bachelor in film and theater. He has produced hundreds of YouTube videos and live streams where he is performing public speaking. He was one of the main hosts of the G4 reboot. He has done many live speaking engagements. His entire career is built upon talking in front of a camera. Mooney's interpretation of the situation is so out of touch, it's a genuine achievement.
If one interprets these statements uncharitably, though, then it looks like Jirard is obfuscating the truth of the matter, which is that the money going into Open Hand isn't being spent on what he says it is. This uncharitable position is the one Jobst takes from the get-go.
Dude, he already admitted it.
If we take this uncharitable approach and then apply the facts to our legal definition, if Jirard did actually know that Open Hand was holding on to all of the money, or he should have known that this was the case, But he continued to say that he's worked with all of these charities and has donated money to help families. He is guilty of a misdemeanor.
Well, that's good to know because Jirard literally admitted to knowing that the funds weren't being donated in 2022 and still continued to lie in 2023. So what more is there to be said?
Here's the thing though, legal justice, unlike YouTube drama, has some rules of engagement. And a fundamental rule of justice is that people are innocent until proven guilty. And so, I'm inclined to consider Jirard's statements charitably.
Did you not hear what I just said? He admitted it.
Even if one says, okay, I believe OpenHand has worked with the organizations it says it has and has contributed something, if not funds, to parents who are trying to figure out dementia, etc., then one could still make the argument that Jirard should have known that his statements may have been misleading. This is especially the case for the most recent IndieLand event, at which time I believe Jobst had already conducted the interview with Jirard and made his intentions known.
Wait, what? You believe that during IndieLand 2023, I'd already spoken to Jirard? Why would you need to believe anything? It would take 2 seconds to check, and if you did that, you'd know that you're completely wrong. IndieLand was October 27 to 29, and I emailed OpenHand on November 4. These emails, with the dates, are shown in my video. And obviously the call had to happen after the emails because we spoke at length about the emails during this conversation. Oh, but that's right, you didn't listen to the call and have no idea what you're talking about.
Jirard, even if the statements he made are considered charitably, has arguably uttered a false statement about OpenHand negligently, without due consideration of the facts which by use of ordinary care he should have known. This potential argument of negligence is corroborated by Jirard's statement that he didn't know that OpenHand had never donated the money. It could be argued that Jirard, as the primary fundraiser for OpenHand and as an officer of that organization, should have known that OpenHand hadn't made any monetary distributions and thus acted negligently when making his statements implying that it had.
Mooney goes on for several minutes talking about how if Jirard was negligent, it may still be charity fraud. Though again, Jirard already admitted that he knew the money wasn't donated, so we know this isn't negligence.
That said, given what I've seen of Jirard's statements and of the law itself, I'm inclined to call this initial allegation of charity fraud plausible.
Despite knowing nothing about the situation, Mooney still says charity fraud is plausible, which goes to show just how bad things really are.
And despite agreeing that Jobst's allegation of charity fraud is plausible here, I still have strong feelings about his sloppy research. As such, I'm going to further distinguish this finding of plausible by stating that Jobst's initial statement in his first video that Jirard's behavior was almost certainly illegal is trouble. This is not how justice works. You don't find the label to fit the deed and then gather evidence after the fact. You can't start with, it's definitely charity fraud, and then go hunting for evidence, because if you go hunting for witches, you will inevitably find them.
There are so many things both wrong and insulting here, it's going to take a bit to break down. First of all, gotta love the irony of accusing me of sloppy research. Mooney thinks reading a legal statute means you're an expert on a subject and you've done worthwhile research. Well, instead of doing that, I investigated the actual facts of the matter. And because Mooney didn't, he looks like a total fool.
This is not how justice works. You don't find the label to fit the deed and then gather evidence after the fact. You can't start with, it's definitely charity fraud, and then go hunting for evidence.
Mooney is lying about what happened. Or would it be better if I said he was being negligent? Mooney has absolutely no idea about the timeline of events. He doesn't even know when I spoke with Jirard. So why is he claiming to know when I came to my conclusion, and why? Is he under the impression that I woke up one day and randomly decided that the OpenHand Foundation committed charity fraud, and then I started trying to find evidence for that? That's not how it works. I conducted an investigation and came to the conclusion that charity fraud had taken place. By the time I made my first video, Jirard had already confessed to being a liar. I already had all of the facts necessary to know that fraud had taken place. And no, they were not all put into that first video. And the reason all the facts weren't put into the first video is because, again, the point of a YouTube video is not to convict someone of a crime. This isn't a courtroom where you might have 2 weeks to outline all of the evidence. My goal was to make a short and concise video to announce my conclusion and give a few examples as to what I'm talking about.
The initial evidence presented in Jobst's first video is not nearly enough for him to draw a conclusion of illegal behavior with certainty, and it does come across a bit like a witch hunt and not a proper investigation.
See, he did it again. He mischaracterized what I said and claimed I said I was certain, which is a lie. And again, he incorrectly asserts that a YouTube video is supposed to be a complete compendium of evidence, or that I based my conclusion solely on the content of that video. These are wild assumptions that come out of nowhere, and Mooney does this a lot, so this might be a blind spot for him and he's not aware that he does this. But let's rewind a bit, because this isn't the first time Mooney accused me of starting with a conclusion and working from there. A few minutes ago, he said this.
This uncharitable position is the one Jobst takes from the get-go.
This uncharitable position is one that Jobs takes from the get-go. Mooney does not substantiate this claim in any way, or provide any rationale for this conclusion. He paints an extremely negative picture about me and my intentions, but there is no reason to come to this conclusion, or at least Mooney doesn't present any reasons. He just says this as though it's fact, even though it couldn't be further from the truth. This is where the clear bias becomes apparent. Jirard's motivations are always taken charitably by Mooney, but for me, I'm never afforded such luxury. If I think Jirard is lying, it's not because there might be a good reason, it's just because I had that position from the very beginning. Not once does Mooney ever ask why I don't believe Jirard. Not once does Mooney even entertain the possibility there might be a good reason I think the way that I do. Ultimately, Mooney takes Jirard's words charitably because Mooney is ignorant. It's the exact same reason he gets everything else wrong. How do I put this? Jirard is a liar. He has absolutely no regard for the truth, and he does not care if what he is saying is correct. He will just say whatever he thinks sounds good in any moment. He's kind of like a watered-down Tommy Tallarico. And like Tommy Tallarico, you can't appreciate just how much Jirard lies until you really pay attention to what he says. Jirard lies about everything, but let's focus on one example. Let's look at Jirard's mother's battle with dementia. I'm using this example because it's probably the thing he's talked about the most, and it's also very important because it's what the Open Hand Foundation is dedicated to. She is the very reason for its existence. Jirard's mother was diagnosed with dementia in 2003, and this is an important date because it's when the Open Hand Foundation claims to have started fundraising for dementia research. This diagnosis date is confirmed on the Open Hand website. On the AFTD website within the press release for the recent $600,000 donation, this year is again confirmed. Jirard was born on the 3rd of January 1988. Because his birthday is so early in January, this makes it easy to know how old he is in any given year. In 2003, Jirard was 15, and Jirard has also confirmed he was 15 when she was diagnosed.
When I was 15, when she was officially diagnosed, it took 5 years to get her diagnosed.
Now, based on the information I've presented to you, you would think it was safe to assume she was diagnosed in 2003. But then in Jirard's response video, he said this.
She was officially diagnosed with FTD 4 years later when I was 14.
Given that his response video was carefully scripted, you'd assume this statement was correct, which would put her diagnosis year as 2002. In a Story Collider speech, Jirard again confirms he was 14 years old when she was diagnosed. He even gave the exact day it happened.
And it took almost 2.5 years from there. I was 14 years old. It was my first day of high school. And we're all getting together. I get called out of class. We go to the doctor's office over in Gardena. And the doctor says, your mom has been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia.
This story is really specific. He gives his age, the day it happened, and where it happened. Jirard also reconfirms this story in his now deleted 2021 Alzheimer's Association blog post, and he has confirmed this age during his Indieland streams.
Since she got diagnosed when I was 14 roughly.
Okay, so now we are not sure if it was 2003 or 2002. This is a tough one because you would assume the Open Hand Foundation would list the year correctly, given that it's so important. But on the other hand, Jirard's story had so many details, it's hard to imagine he was lying. In any case, it's somewhere around there, right? Well, maybe, because then you've also got this.
A cause very close, near, and dear to my heart. When I was 10 years old, my mom got diagnosed with dementia.
For those of you guys who don't know, when I was about 10 years old, I found out that my mom had dementia, a very specific rare kind called frontotemporal dementia. When I was 10 years old, I found out that my mom had dementia. To give you guys an idea, a little background on me, when I was 10, my mom got diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, which is essentially
When Jirard was 10 years old, the year was 1998. And before Mooney jumps in and says he was saying all this because he was just camera shy, he has also tweeted that he was 10 years old when she was diagnosed on multiple occasions. So now she was either diagnosed in 2003, 2002, or 1998. Let's try and look at this another way. We know that she died in 2013, so if Jirard tells us how long she lived after diagnosis, we can trace things back to get the correct year.
From diagnosis, the doctor said that she had about 18 months to 5 years to live. But because my family and I fought so hard, my mom lived 15 years after diagnosis.
This is a scripted video, so it seems a bit more legit. 15 years before 2013 is 1998. But what about this?
Lived until about 2013. So she lived 16 years after diagnosis, and is one of the hardest fighting survivors of her illness, specifically from diagnosis to death. So
16 years before 2013 is 1997, so now the potential diagnosis years have increased to 4. You can start to see that something isn't quite right here. This is not normal behavior, and trust me, I'm barely scratching the surface. I could go all day. But listen to that last clip again, because Jirard said something interesting.
she lived 16 years after diagnosis, and is one of the hardest fighting survivors of her illness, specifically from diagnosis to death. So
He said she was one of the hardest fighting survivors, specifically from diagnosis to death. That's a very, very interesting claim. I don't really know what it's supposed to mean, but let's check the life expectancy for people diagnosed with FTD. I'm going to use the AFTD website because it's the one Jirard donated $600,000 to, so if he thinks they are an authority, that's fine by me. According to the AFTD, people diagnosed with FTD have a life expectancy of 7 to 13 years. I gotta be honest, I don't believe a single word Jirard says, so I'm going to go with the Open Hand website and assume her diagnosis was in 2003, which means she survived for 10 years after diagnosis, which is right smack bang in the middle of the average life expectancy. So again, I don't really know what Jirard means, but it's not the only time he's ever said something like that.
And she went on to have it for 16 years. She's one of the oldest, or the longest lasting person from diagnosis of her illness. She got it when I was 10, and she passed away when I was 26. I am someone who has who had a mom who had dementia. I was 10 years old when my mom got dementia, and she passed away when I was 26. So she actually was one of the longest surviving members of FTD, or I shouldn't say members, but really people diagnosed with FTD.
Now he says she's one of the longest lasting from diagnosis of her illness. This claim is starting to get pretty crazy. But how long can people actually live with FTD? Again, according to the AFTD, the length of progression varies from 2 to over 20 years. So people can live over 20 years with FTD. This tracks with other sources which say the same thing. This makes me really curious what Jirard meant. But check this out. In 2017, he said this.
My mom was a strong as hell woman, and she went down fighting every single step of the way. And more importantly, she is the longest lasting survivor to date with someone who's been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. They gave her 6 months. She said, screw you, I'm going to live 15 years. She pushed the boundaries of what science knew and what people knew about this illness.
This is the most insane claim I've ever heard Jirard make. She is the longest lasting person ever? She pushed the boundaries of what science knew? This is intense. Jirard obviously knew how crazy this lie was because he never made it again after this and toned it down a lot in those other clips I showed. Jirard also just makes things up. He claims that people who are diagnosed with FTD live for 6.5 months.
Usually someone who's diagnosed with FTD lasts about 6.5 months.
Not 6 months, not 7 months, 6.5 months. I think this is funny how specific it is, given that it's so utterly wrong. He claims that most people with dementia die of malnutrition, which is also just flat out wrong.
The most common factor upon death for dementia patients is lack of appetite and just not eating.
Most people who die of dementia die because they stop eating.
Usually someone who's diagnosed with FTD lasts about 6.5 months. Mostly due to malnutrition, just not getting enough food, not eating enough, not being present.
The leading cause of death for those with dementia is pneumonia. This is confirmed by both a 2009 and 2023 study, with cancer and heart disease following behind. Talking directly on this point, Alzheimer's Research UK states that people with dementia can sometimes die directly as a result of lack of food or drink, although this is rare. Let's look at something a bit more light-hearted: Jirard's job at Best Buy. Apparently, Jirard was a good salesman, and because of Jirard, his Best Buy did really well.
I worked at Best Buy selling games. And the thing about Best Buy is I got a visceral fucking high selling video games. I earned nothing for selling video games, but I was selling passion. That's the thing that I've got. And I loved it. I loved it so much. And I didn't earn any extra money for it. I'm just saying, like, hey, Mario DS is fucking good. You should buy it. Mario Galaxy is sick. I love these games. You should buy them. And my Best Buy store was getting incredibly weirded out because if you looked at the charts of like successes of like what was taking off at the time, you kind of saw that our Best Buy was like #1 in our territory for video games.
You kind of saw that our Best Buy was like #1 in our territory. This is really weird language to use. Either it was #1 in the territory or it wasn't. How can you kind of see that your store was like #1? It just seems like Jirard is making this up. But this isn't the only time he's talked like this.
Because in my store, we had some of the highest sales numbers in the country in regards to video games. Because I was that weird guy that would dumpster dive at GameStop to get statues like that, clean it off, and then bring it into Best Buy. And I'd put it there because I want people excited about buying a game.
Yeah.
Like,
now he's saying that because of him, his Best Buy had some of the best sales numbers in the country, not just the territory. I don't know if this is true or not, but Jirard would then go on to say this.
And it actually changed my entire approach of how I marketed to sell games in the store. And because of G4, we became the biggest Best Buy in the country to sell video games because I was basically copying Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb and how they talked about games. And I just took it so personally.
So now, Jirard single-handedly made his Best Buy the biggest in the country. There are over 1,000 Best Buys in the US, and Jirard's was the biggest because of him. But then I wonder why there are articles like this Screen Rant one, where Jirard claims he worked at Best Buy for 5.5 years and felt aimless because he was passed up on a promotion. They really didn't want to promote the guy that made their store the biggest in the country? But then Jirard says the complete opposite and says that he had multiple opportunities to go to corporate because he was so good at his job.
I had a couple of opportunities to go to Best Buy at a corporate level and to help restructure things, because in my store we had some of the highest sales numbers in the country in regards to video games.
Even his reason for quitting Best Buy changes. In a 2020 Las Vegas Review-Journal interview, Jirard said that after JonTron introduced him to Egoraptor and Dex Bonus, it inspired him to pursue gaming videos, and so he quit the next day. However, in a 2016 video Jirard uploaded to his second channel, he tells a very specific story about pitching an idea to his manager and getting shut down.
Now again, I was just a kid. I was just a young college kid with stupid ambitions and dreams, but I thought, you know what? If I am to be here, I'm gonna make the best of it. And so I pitched my idea to my Best Buy manager, and he was like, wow, this is really cool. And that was it. And it sucked. It drove me crazy because I ran analytical data to prove that what I was doing was working. I had receipts and facts and proof and people, you know, giving me congratulations on doing such a good job because I was adamant and passionate about making it work. This exact exchange I had with the manager at the time is the reason why I left Best Buy, because every time I kept reinventing ways to sell games, to talk to people, to communicate.
But then, in a 2022 interview with Chris Denker, he tells this extremely bizarre story about getting into a fight with his manager and buying equipment with $1 bills.
Manager calls me over for the fourth time and goes, what's the problem? Why can't you sell the TV? And I was like, he didn't want a fucking TV. He wanted a cable. He wanted to get out of here. And he goes, he doesn't know what he wants. You tell him what you want. And I heard that and I was like, oh, so that's how we do business here. Like, that's how you see this. Yeah. Like we tell people what they want. And then he just pulled me aside and goes, listen here, you little privileged piece of shit. You listen to me. You do what I tell you. If you keep this up, you'll be working here forever. And that was it. The switch flipped. I turned to the old lady and I was like, ma'am, I'm gonna say something really rude. Excuse me.
turned to the guy and said, "Fuck you, I quit, you piece of shit."
Let's go.
Turned back to the lady, and I was like, "Let's go get your iPod." So I like sold her iPod, sent her on her way.
You have no idea how many hours I wasted going down this stupid rabbit hole of Jirard lies. He lies constantly. He legitimately doesn't seem to care if what he is saying is true, and he exaggerates all the time. My mum was the longest living person ever with FTD. I made my Best Buy the biggest in the country. My charity is the main funding support partner for the UCSF. Jirard is a bullshit artist. It's just what Jirard does. And this, Mooney, is why I do not take Jirard's statements charitably. And now it's time to look at the allegation of embezzlement.
The allegation that Jirard lied about what OpenHand is doing and has done is charity fraud. And even if Jirard is charged with charity fraud, it is ultimately a simple misdemeanor. It's like shoplifting. The allegation that Jirard stole money from OpenHand is potentially far more serious. If the value of the stolen funds exceeds $950, which it would, then this charge of embezzlement is no mere misdemeanor. It is a felony under California law, with a fine up to $10,000 and a term of up to 3 years in state prison. Jobs states in his final response that he doesn't even know how embezzlement got brought into the allegations, which worries me.
No, I didn't. I never said that. Again, Mooney is straight up lying about what I said in my video. All I said is that I never used the word, and then I went on to explain what it means.
The sloppiness of the legal research really comes through here when we discuss Jobst's arguments surrounding embezzlement. In Jobst's final video, he pulls this definition of embezzlement from Google. How do I know that? Well, I typed definition of embezzlement into Google and this automatic generation popped up right at the top. Now look, for a non-legal definition this is fine, but this is a legal accusation and this is not a legal definition, and there is a very big difference.
We are reaching peak levels of lawyer smugness here. We are talking about a YouTube video where I am trying to convey what embezzlement means in simple terms to an audience of 1 million people. This isn't a courtroom. I'm not convicting Jirard of a crime. I am not the state. Mooney even says that for a general definition, it's fine, which it is. Of course, I can give a general definition to the public so that everyone isn't confused as to what I'm talking about. I used the Google definition because it is a simple and easy to understand definition of embezzlement. I didn't use that to form my own opinion, nor would I use that definition to charge Jirard with a crime. You're just assuming that because you never asked me, and you characterize all of my actions in bad faith. And what you'll find is that even though I used a simple definition to explain the concept, the content of my video still completely covers the legal definition that Mooney presents. So all of this talk about the definition is ultimately meaningless.
Jobs argues that Jirard is admitting to embezzlement when Jirard says that the money donated during Indieland is going to charity, and that he, meaning Jirard, wasn't touching any of it. Jirard says this very frequently, when in fact, according to Jobs, the money is not going to charity as it is just sitting there, and some of that money is being used on expenses, when Jirard suggests that he has had to personally cover expenses for Indieland in the past. So, since Jirard says all money goes to charity, that he hasn't touched any of the donations, and that Indieland expenses have at times been covered out of pocket, when the tax returns show that OpenHand has spent money on expenses, Jirard is lying, and thus his actions constitute, and I quote, admitting to embezzlement.
This is all completely wrong. Mooney appears to have absolutely no idea what the allegations are. I made it very clear in my video why I was accusing Jirard of embezzlement, and it went straight over Mooney's head. He gave himself one job. He didn't bother to do any research outside of my YouTube videos, and even then, despite limiting himself to a tiny sliver of the information available, he still couldn't even understand that. So let me explain again. Jirard solicited donations in the form of bits, subs, and merch to himself. He did not solicit them to OpenHand. This is because he solicited them to his own Twitch channel. So when people gave money through his Twitch channel with the bits and subs, they gave money directly to Jirard. Jirard said he was going to send all of that money to the OpenHand Foundation, but he didn't. That money never made it to OpenHand. Instead, Jirard spent it himself. Furthermore, Jirard said many times that all of the money was going to dementia research.
Bits, subs, gift subs, super chats, memberships, anything financially involved with the show goes to dementia research, please.
Guys, a reminder, bits, gift subs, and donations all go towards
it's
dementia
all
research.
good. However you can get it to us.
Everything on stream today, whether you're donating bits or subs or donations towards any goals via the Tiltify account, if you buy a t-shirt, anything like that, all the money goes towards dementia research. We make none of it. It all goes for the good cause. Donate money via Tiltify. All the money goes to the Open Hand Foundation, an organization that we started in honor of my mom, and all that money goes to dementia research.
This isn't a vague statement like all money is going to charity, it's very specific. Jirard specifically said many times all of the money donated will go to dementia research, but when he got the money, he spent a large chunk of it on his own expenses. You cannot say that all of the money is going to dementia research and then spend it on flights and hotels, which Jirard admitted he did.
There were real production costs when it comes to running this event. We paid for flights, hotels, appearance fees, supplies, food and catering, costs of goods for merchandise, etc. All of that totaled just under $12,000. This is still an outstanding invoice as not everything has been received or paid yet. Income from Twitch subscriptions and bits, along with merchandise, have offset some of the production costs.
Notice how Mooney only quotes Jirard as saying the money is going to charity. He hides the fact that Jirard made very clear statements as to what the money would be used for. This comes across as cherry-picking the statements he wants to consider.
So, since Jirard says all money goes to charity, that he hasn't touched any of the donations, and that Indieland expenses have at times been covered out of pocket, when the tax returns show that Open Hand has spent money on expenses, Jirard is lying, and thus his actions constitute, and I quote, admitting to embezzlement.
Mooney devotes an entire section of his video arguing against allegations that never happened. He seems to honestly believe that my issue with Open Hand is that it had expenses. My mind boggles trying to understand how Mooney failed so spectacularly to understand a simple concept, especially when I explicitly said in my video that it's totally normal for a charity to have expenses. To be clear, a charity using donations to cover expenses isn't illegal. It's totally normal and common. But that's not what Jirard did.
And even if it was intentional, there is no convincing evidence whatsoever that Jirard has converted the donated money for his own personal use.
Yes, there is. You see, this is why in my video, I specifically outlined how Jirard spent the donations on himself. Some might say, but Carl, Jirard isn't spending money on himself. He's spending money to fund Indieland. But Indieland is Jirard. It's his event, run by his company, streamed on his Twitch channel. Of everyone in the entire world who benefits from Indieland, it's Jirard who benefits the most. He gets the Twitch followers, he gets the media attention, he gets to mingle with game developers and celebrities, he gets all the credit. And do you really think that everyone who subscribes during Indieland instantly cancels their subscription the moment it ends? Jirard taking donations to pay for Indieland is not only him spending donations on himself, it's him paying for something that he directly benefits from. Indieland is run by Jirard's company, That One Video Entertainment. Jirard took the money he said was going to dementia research or the Open Hand Foundation and spent it on his own company.
If we look at Jirard's statements charitably, however, which we really should because we believe that people are innocent until proven guilty, then really there's nothing legally wrong here. Jirard says that all the money goes to charity. He's not wrong. Open Hand is a public charity, remember that.
See what I mean? Mooney does not understand that the money never made it to Open Hand, so he is trying to argue that it's okay for Open Hand to have expenses, as if that was ever an issue.
He says that he doesn't touch any of it. That is true if weighed charitably.
No, it's not true, because the money went directly to Jirard. He would have had to have touched it out of necessity because it went straight to his own company and not to Open Hand. It's possible that Mooney is failing to understand such basic ideas because he lacks any knowledge of what Indieland or the Completionist is due to his lack of research. It's possible he doesn't even know what That One Video Entertainment is. He probably doesn't understand the flow of money, or that Indieland isn't a charity and is an event run by his private company. Let me explain something to you. Indieland is an event that has many sponsors. If you watch the streams, you can see that Indieland works with some pretty big brands. Brands like Corsair, G Fuel, DX Racer, Limited Run, Dolby, and many more. These sponsors pay significant amounts of money to have their brand shown on screen and to be mentioned. None of that money goes to Open Hand. All of that money goes to Jirard's company, That One Video Entertainment. This is because Indieland is not an event run by the Open Hand Foundation. I don't have a problem with this, and the reason I don't have a problem with this is because Jirard never said that the sponsor money was going to charity or Open Hand or dementia research. If you don't lie, we don't have a problem. The money from bits, subs, and merch goes straight to Jirard's company too, and would require Jirard to then manually transfer that money to the Open Hand Foundation. Jirard never did that, and this I do have a problem with, because Jirard lied and said he would. But even if Jirard did send that money to Open Hand, he was still lying, because he said all of it was going to dementia research when it wasn't.
It is expected for a charity to use donated funds to pay for expenses. That is part of what charities do, and those expenses do not appear to be disbursements to any of Open Hand Foundation's officers.
If you think Jirard or Open Hand did nothing wrong because it's normal for charities to have expenses, you clearly do not understand the issue in question.
It could even be the case that Jirard has in fact donated his personal income to Open Hand to use on Indieland expenses. We don't know if that is the case, and neither does Jobst.
Once again, we see that Mooney doesn't understand what Indieland is. Indieland is an event run by Jirard's company. It's not Open Hand's event. If Jirard wanted to pay for Indieland expenses, he would do it directly through his company. Jirard would not send money to Open Hand to then spend money on Indieland. That is ridiculous. And once again, we also know he didn't do this because it would have shown up as revenue on Open Hand's tax filings.
None of us are in a position to make allegations as serious as embezzlement.
I am in a position to make a claim as serious as embezzlement because I investigated the situation and came to that conclusion. You are not in a position to make a claim as serious as embezzlement because you have only watched a few YouTube videos and you are ignorant to what happened.
Jobst also brings up the Open Hand Foundation's recent donation of the accumulated $600,000 to the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, stating that the holding of the funds for the purpose of making a restricted donation makes no sense if now, all of a sudden, the foundation can in fact make such a donation, thus suggesting again some kind of malfeasance. But as we discussed earlier, it's perfectly normal for a public charity to hold onto funds, especially if a complicated endowment might be on the table. Let me ask all of you, why do you suspect the Open Hand Foundation suddenly had to donate $600,000 instead of waiting to build a substantial potential endowment fund? What could have possibly forced their hand?
The Open Hand Foundation never mentioned an endowment. You are making up excuses on their behalf instead of accepting what they actually said. Their excuse was that they needed to save up money to make a restricted donation. This is false, as I demonstrated. You do not need to withhold funds in order to make a restricted donation. This is a complete lie.
This allegation of embezzlement is both trouble and implausible. If a defamation lawsuit does arise from this debacle, I suspect that this allegation of embezzlement will take front and center stage.
You don't understand the basic facts of the matter, so your opinion is meaningless.
Why did Jirard specifically bring up Jobst and Mutahar's mistake concerning the absence of a signature on the tax returns? Jobst makes a big deal about this and presents it as if it is just some kind of a gotcha statement. But it wasn't meant to be a gotcha. It's meant to show a very fundamental truth about these accusations. Jobst and Mutahar have a less than zero level of requisite legal understanding, a degree of legal knowledge so unqualified that the accusers don't even know about e-filing signatures on tax returns.
I said the tax filings weren't signed, which is incorrect. I shouldn't have said it, and it's definitely concerning that such a basic mistake was made. But let me explain why this mistake was made. I didn't do any research into whether or not the forms were signed because it's inconsequential. It makes no difference to me if the forms were or weren't signed, as it was not considered whatsoever in any of my conclusions. It was such a meaningless inclusion that I didn't even bother to make sure it was correct. This isn't a good thing, and I've learned from this. This mistake, however, doesn't change the issue or change any of the facts. So to harp on this particular error as if it's important to the issue at hand is manipulative. When I call Mooney ignorant and call him out for not being aware of important evidence like the phone call, it's because the phone call really matters. That phone call is vital to understanding the situation. And I don't mean just listening to it once, I mean studying it and remembering it. When I call Mooney out for not understanding basic facts, like when the phone call took place, or not remembering the reasons OpenHand gave in their official statement, or not knowing that Indieland isn't an event run by the OpenHand Foundation, or not even knowing who Jirard is or his history, it's because those facts really matter. They have a huge impact on the allegations. When Mooney calls me out for incorrectly saying the tax forms weren't signed, it's not because it matters, because it doesn't. That fact couldn't be less relevant. The reason he harps on it is because he wants to attack my credibility. But attacking my credibility is a futile endeavor. People don't find me credible because I'm a lawyer or because I have a degree. People find me credible because I earnestly try to discover the truth and I am a good fact finder. I don't just watch YouTube videos like you. As I said in the beginning of the video, you could be the best lawyer in the world, but if you don't even understand the basic facts, your opinion is worthless and dangerous. If I could choose between a normal guy like me who knows and remembers more facts than anyone else about this case, or a smug lawyer who watched a few YouTube videos and thinks they're an expert, I'm going to choose that normal guy every day of the week, because at least his moral compass will be pointing in the right direction. Even if he is not correct according to the legal statute you think is relevant, at least he has enough information to make an informed moral judgment.
There's a philosophical saying, a razor, that I rely upon in my practice as a lawyer, but also in my day-to-day life as a human being. A way of thinking that reduces conflict, minimizes drama, and is generally accurate. It's called Hanlon's razor, and it goes something like this. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity.
Lying constantly is not a byproduct of stupidity. Lying constantly is a byproduct of being a dishonest person. Jirard is a dishonest person. He may be stupid also, but that doesn't explain all of his deception.
Ignorance is something we all occasionally fall victim to, the Jobsts, the Jirards, and the Mooneys, for that matter, alike. And frankly, given what I've seen emerge from the Completionist debacle, I'm inclined to give Jirard the benefit of the doubt.
Well, it's clear you gave Jirard the benefit of the doubt here, but you certainly didn't do that for me. Sure, I wasn't accused of a crime, so it's not that big of a deal, but the logic should still apply. You considered all of my actions in a bad light, and Jirard's in a good light.
The court of public opinion is no place to try this case.
This is a matter of public concern, so this is definitely an issue that should be publicly addressed. Jirard was soliciting funds from the public, and if I am correct, was also stealing money from his fans. This needed to be made public as soon as reasonably possible once I had come to my conclusion.
Maybe I've missed something important, and if I have, please bring it to my attention in the comments. I'll try and address it there or gather enough questions for a follow-up mini-episode in response.
Well, here's an entire video for you. Maybe you can respond to this.
Jirard isn't always the best communicator, and he has a tendency to speak before thinking, I've noticed.
No one who knows who Jirard is would ever say this. He is an excellent communicator. It's been his job for over a decade. He has been the host of multiple productions. He is a professional actor. Mooney believes this because he has not done a single iota of research into who Jirard is. Jirard knows exactly how to communicate well, and he always does if you spent 2 seconds to watch any other videos that Jirard is in. If you see Jirard lying and fumbling his words, it's not because he is some amateur who accidentally found himself in front of a camera and is panicking.
When Jirard is being interviewed by Jobst and he asks if Jobst wants money or something to put a stop to the investigation, is this Jirard offering a bribe? Or is this Jirard asking whether he's being extorted?
What on earth is this? Let's listen to what Jirard said, because this statement from Mooney is so wrong and characterizes the conversation so poorly, I struggle to believe it's not intentional.
You know, I'm not trying to be like, do you guys want money to help me hide this? It's not what this is at all.
So Jirard said, I'm not trying to be like, do you guys want money to help me hide this? It's not this at all. Jirard is not asking me if I want money. Not even close to that. In fact, it's the opposite. He is saying explicitly that he is not asking if we want money.
Or is this Jirard asking whether he's being extorted? It's hard to say, but it certainly looks ugly.
Mooney says he can't tell if Jirard thought I was trying to extort him. If this is true, Mooney must be the only person in the world who can't tell. No one, and I mean no one who actually listened to that call, came away from it feeling as though I was trying to extort Jirard, or that he may have felt that way. It's hard for you to really understand what it was like during that call, because your experience of it comes months later, after videos have already been made and public backlash has already happened. But at the time, all me and Mutahar were doing were asking questions. Jirard thought we were going to make a video, but he didn't know what was going to be in it. He didn't know what was going to be said. He had no idea at all about how much we knew. Jirard's actions on that call, talking about his career being over, talking about his fights within his family, talking about stopping YouTube, are not the actions of someone who had been doing nothing wrong and is just responding to inquiry. Jirard acted extremely guilty from the moment he jumped on that call.
These accusations might be responsible for the termination of Indieland and the abandonment of a carefully organized endowment, which could cost the field of dementia research potentially millions of dollars in funding.
Mooney is once again completely clueless, and his utter ignorance of the facts makes him paint a terrible picture about my actions. He is claiming that maybe I ruined Indieland. Maybe because of me, Indieland is over, and if it wasn't for me, Jirard would have continued to do Indieland every year and would have raised millions. Except Jirard himself confirmed to Mutahar and I that he had already made the decision to end Indieland, and Indieland 2023 was going to be the last Indieland ever.
This is a private fight that I've been dealing with for months with my family, and I even told my family, hey, this is the last Indieland I'm ever going to do, because this is the 10th year anniversary of my mom's passing, and when I kind of found all this information out, I was very unhappy with what things were going, and
Jirard told us in no uncertain terms he had already told his family this was going to be the last Indieland he was ever going to do. From our perspective, this was never going to risk the future of Indieland because Indieland was already finished. What this was about was making sure all of that money went to where it needed to go. And consider this. Given that 2023 was going to be the last Indieland ever, as Jirard told us, this means they wouldn't have been expecting to raise large amounts of money in future years. You would think at this point it would cause them to finally give away all of that money. But no, they were still not planning on donating that money. Jirard said the reason they were going to donate it now, even after the last Indieland had already happened, was because of pressure from Mutahar and myself.
I mean, as of this week, we've been having conversations about moving it as early as today or tomorrow, just because the pressure I got from you guys, if I'm being quite honest.
But here is what's so amazing about Jirard. There are always multiple levels of bullshit, and you can only realize that when you fact check what he says. What were the chances he was just lying on that call? What if he was just saying it was the last Indieland to try and stop us from going public? Well, we went and watched Indieland 2023 and saw that Jirard was saying this.
The crabs are here. Thank you, Ashley. Guys, welcome to Indieland. We miss you, Ashley. And we know you'll be back next year for sure.
Yes.
Yo, X-Water, you should come to Indieland next year. We'll figure it out. We'd love to have you, dude. Yo, Chris needs to join the Indieland committee next year. His ideas are fire.
Adrian sounds like she wants to be on the Indieland planning committee next year. I love you, Ray. Ray, you got to come to Indieland next year, man. We'd love to have you. Dude, holy shit.
And just before Indieland 2023, he was saying this.
We decided to go digital this year, and in 2024, we're going physical in person again. So
clearly, Indieland 2023 was not supposed to be the last one. Jirard was just lying to us once again. Can you imagine? We find out he's kept all of that money while lying to his audience, and when we talk to him to ask him some questions, he lies his face off throughout that entire call. These are not the actions of an innocent man. Mooney is talking about this situation months after the fact, not knowing basic things I knew before I even made my first video. That's how far behind and out of touch he is.
There were a lot of numbers thrown around by Jobst and Mutahar, so let me provide some numbers of my own. Let me show you how the sausage is made. My most popular video to date has 900,000 views. It's made about $5,500.
This is where he goes on his rant about how much money I make. I talked about this at the beginning of the video and how I actually lost money talking about OpenHand. I won't go too much into it again, but I will clarify a couple of details because Mooney once again talks out of his ass.
Is that in my experience, a sponsor pays around $20 to $30 per anticipated 1,000 views. And YouTubers like Jobst and Mutahar, who can frequently break that 1 million view barrier, will receive premium rates for their sponsorships.
This is false. He is saying something that is not true. As someone who does regularly get over 1 million views, I can assure you the rates don't change. 1 million views is not some magical number. If anything, I've found the rates go down the more views you get, because the investment and thus the risk is higher.
Is that in my experience, a sponsor pays around $20 to $30 per anticipated 1,000 views.
I certainly do not get between $20 to $30 per 1,000 views. The absolute maximum I ever get is $20 per 1,000 views, which is rare. Most of my sponsorships are a flat fee, which means it doesn't matter how many views the video gets. I'll still get paid the same. When I do deals that are paid based on view count, there is always a cap, which at the moment is usually around 1 million views. So everything over 1 million views, I don't get compensated for.
Let me ask you something, gentlemen. Let's say that OpenHand's tax returns, an inevitable tax audit next year come back, and no charges of embezzlement or even fraud materialize. Or let's say that the state of California pursues an action against OpenHand and discovers, at the end of it, that they were innocent. I will be extra clear here because I know that there's a tendency to mince words and move goalposts. I don't mean mere punitive fines or even excise taxes. I mean specific governmental action and results against the OpenHand Foundation for the crimes of embezzlement and/or fraud that you have specifically alleged. Can we expect you to apologize and donate your earnings and the sponsorship income from the relevant videos to dementia research charities?
No, I would not apologize. And the fact that you think I might means you clearly don't really understand my position. I didn't make my videos because I think what Jirard did was illegal. I made my videos because I think what Jirard did was morally wrong. I think Jirard is a liar. I think Jirard is a thief. And I think Jirard manipulates his audience constantly. I think Jirard was lying to his audience to get more money and clout. I think he was stealing donations to benefit himself. I think his family's golf tournament is stealing money under the guise of benefiting charity. And I don't think Jirard or his family were ever planning on donating that money. I couldn't give two shits if any of that is illegal or illegal. It would not affect my own moral judgments because I don't base my morals on whether or not a court convicts someone of a crime. I also do think that what Jirard did was a crime, and thus I'd like to see him investigated. But if it turned out what he did was legal, my own opinion on his actions would not change in the slightest. I have learned enough about the situation to see that his behavior is abhorrent. I hate liars. I hate the fact that so many people feel like it's okay to be flagrantly dishonest to their fans. Jirard has a problem, and he needs to realize that what he is doing is not okay.
You might not want to answer that right away. Maybe talk to your own lawyers before you agree to anything. They might not want you making any confessions prior to a potential defamation action. And if such a defamation suit is filed, we'll cover that too in a future law review episode.
Mooney has insinuated the entire video that I've opened myself up to a defamation lawsuit. I'm curious as to how much Mooney knows about defamation law, because there is not a single person on Earth who has put more time and effort into trying to find the truth on this issue. Does Mooney even know where Jirard would try to sue me? If he thinks California, not only would they not have jurisdiction, but there is no way he'd be able to demonstrate that I had malice or reckless disregard for the truth. And I'm pretty damn sure I'd be able to prove that everything I said was true. Jirard would need to sue me in Australia. And do you even have any idea how defamation law works here? You're a lawyer in America. I'm curious to see how you would even try to cover a lawsuit based in my home state. Well, as someone who has been dealing with a defamation lawsuit for 2 years, I'm very confident if Jirard or his loser brother Jacques sued me, I'd be just fine. I had already accepted the risks months ago, and I am willing and happy to defend myself with everything I've got. I'm extremely confident they don't have a chance in hell of winning.
Well, this guy walked in.
Okay.
So I went up to him.
Yes.
And I stabbed him 37 times in the chest.
Carl, that kills people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Mooney's video then finishes with a cartoon depiction of me killing Jirard, which demonstrates perfectly how pathetic his video is. Mooney's video is ultimately just an attack on me, masquerading as a deep dive into the open hand situation. It's clear that Mooney never really intended to know what the truth was. He only watched my YouTube videos because his video is only about my videos. They really aren't about open hand. Mooney, of course, has every right to critique my videos if he wants to. If Mooney feels as though I shouldn't use general definitions definitions when talking about fraud, or he feels like I should include more evidence, then fine. That's his opinion that he is free to have. And if Mooney was honest about this, we wouldn't have a problem. But now we do have a problem, because Mooney is defending someone that I believe defrauded his fans out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He is defending someone that I believe is a habitual liar, and he is defending this person without even bothering to put in the effort this situation deserves. He has convinced thousands of people he is an expert on a matter of public concern when he is not. I believe his video does real damage and minimizes the seriousness of this situation. I am definitely annoyed, but that doesn't mean I want anyone to harass or be disrespectful. I have enough experience to know I can't prevent that, but it's really not my intention, and I don't condone harassment of any kind. I do apologize to Mooney for any possible impending fallout, but at the end of the day, if he did any research into who I was, which he should have, he would have known a response video was a real possibility. And if he wasn't prepared for it, he has no one to blame but himself. And I'm sure that Mooney would agree. Thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.